What if the most profound connection you could ever experience is not with another person, but with the unshakable core of your own mind? We are told to seek alignment with others, to find that one person whose energy completes us. But the ancient Stoics proposed a more radical, more stable foundation for a life well lived. They taught that true power, true tranquility, and enduring love are not found in another, but forged within the self. By the end of our time together, you will understand the blueprint for building this inner fortress, a sanctuary so resilient that the chaos of the world can wash against its walls but never breach them. I will show you how to find that alignment within, so that you no longer need to desperately seek it without. This exploration is a philosophical one, a journey into a practical system for living developed over 2 millennia ago. It is not, and cannot be, a substitute for professional medical or psychological advice. The principles we discuss are tools for reflection, not directives for your specific life. The responsibility for how you use these tools for the architecture of your character remains, as it must, entirely your own. Contemplate these ideas, test them against your own experience, and seek qualified counsel for the personal challenges you face. The path is yours to walk. We often mistake Stoicism for a grim, emotionless state of being, a philosophy of the stiff upper lip, of gritting one's teeth through pain and calling it virtue. This is a profound caricature. The Stoics were not unfeeling statues. They were deeply engaged with the world. They were generals, senators, playwrights, and emperors who lived in times of immense turmoil, plague, and political instability. Their philosophy was not an escape from life, but a method for navigating it with clarity, courage, and purpose. They did not seek to eliminate emotion, but to understand its origin. They saw that most of our suffering, our anxiety, our anger, our despair, does not come from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. The goal was not to feel nothing, but to feel the right things, for the right reasons, and to not be enslaved by fleeting passions that cloud our reason. It is the difference between a wild horse dragging its rider through the dust and a skilled equestrian who guides a powerful animal with a steady hand. The power is still there. It is simply channeled by intelligence. The very foundation of this practice, the load-bearing wall upon which the entire structure of a tranquil mind rests, is a single, ruthlessly simple distinction: understanding what is within your control and what is not. The ancient Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. Within our power are our thoughts, our judgments, our choices, our reasoned actions, and the character we choose to build. Outside of our power is almost everything else: other people's opinions, our reputation, our health, our wealth, the weather, the outcome of our efforts, the very turning of the world. We can influence these things, yes, but we do not command them. To invest our peace of mind in what we cannot command is to volunteer for a life of anxiety and disappointment. It is to build our house on sand, at the edge of a tide we can neither predict nor halt. Imagine an archer, her intention to shoot, the knocking of the arrow, the drawing of the bowstring, the careful aim, the steady release. All of this is within her control. This is her work. But the moment the arrow leaves the bow, it enters a world beyond her command. A sudden gust of wind, a hidden flaw in the arrow's shaft, the target suddenly moving. These are external factors. The unskilled archer wails and curses the wind, her entire sense of worth tied to whether the arrow strikes the bullseye. Her happiness is a hostage to fortune. The Stoic archer, however, defines her success differently. She did her part to the best of her ability. She aimed with skill and released with focus. The excellence was in the time's process asterisk, not the outcome. The flight of the arrow belongs to the world. Her peace belongs to her. This is not a recipe for passivity. It is the very opposite. By focusing our energy exclusively on what is ours, to control our actions, our will, our integrity, we unleash an immense amount of power. We are no longer wasting our strength trying to command the wind. We are perfecting our stance. Consider the story of a man we will call Julian. He was, by any external measure, a titan of his industry. He had built a tech empire from the ground up, celebrated for his vision and his relentless drive. His identity, his very sense of self, was fused with the company he had created. He spoke of its market cap as if it were his own vital sign. He treated his public reputation not as a reflection of his work, but as the very source of his worth. He believed he controlled his destiny because he controlled his company, but he didn't. He controlled his decisions, his work ethic, his strategic choices, the market, the actions of a competitor, a shift in global politics. These were never truly his. One year, a cascade of events entirely outside his command conspired against him. A new technology emerged, making his core product obsolete almost overnight. A key investor, spooked by geopolitical tensions, pulled out. A journalist published a story based on a misunderstanding that damaged his reputation. The storm hit, and Julian, who had built his palace on the shoreline, saw it washed away. He did not just lose a company, he felt he had lost himself. He fell into a deep despair, lashing out at his former team, his family, at the world he felt had betrayed him. His suffering was immense, but it was not caused by the market crash or the bad press. It was caused by his foundational error. He had staked his soul on things he never owned. He had confused the flight of the arrow for the skill of the archer. The downfall was preventable, not the business failure, but the internal collapse. Had he cultivated his inner citadel, his character, as diligently as he had cultivated his stock portfolio, he would have weathered the storm. He would have seen the event as a harsh teacher, a test of his resilience, an opportunity to begin again, wiser. Instead, he saw it as an execution. He had handed the keys to his peace of mind to the world, and the world, as it often does, had simply walked away with them. Julian's error leads us to the second great pillar of Stoic practice, the separation of events from our judgments about them. Nothing that happens to us is inherently good or bad. It is simply an event. The goodness or badness is a story we tell ourselves, a layer of judgment we apply. A traffic jam is not a tragedy, it is simply stationary cars. Our judgment, this is a disaster, my day is ruined, I will be late, and everyone will think I am irresponsible, is the source of the frantic anger, the elevated heart rate, the suffering. The Stoics taught that between the stimulus, the event, and our response, there is a space. In that space lies our power and our freedom, the power to choose our interpretation. This is the very heart of what the philosopher Epictetus, a man born a slave who became one of Rome's most revered teachers, called times prohairesis asterisk. It is our faculty of choice, our moral purpose, the will that decides how to interpret and respond to the impressions the world throws at us. It is the one thing that is truly, inalienably ours. A tyrant can take your property, your freedom of movement, even your life, but he cannot force you to assent to a fearful judgment. He cannot command your will. This inner sanctum is inviolable unless we ourselves grant entry to destructive thoughts. This is not mere wordplay, it is a profound psychological insight with immense practical consequences. When you realize that your emotional state is not dictated by external events but by your internal monologue about those events, you move from being a pawn of fate to being an active participant in your own life. Let's look at another story, one of a delayed awakening. Her name is Elena. For most of her life, Elena was a consummate people-pleaser. Her internal compass was perpetually oriented toward the approval of others. Her primary judgment upon meeting any new person or situation was, what must I do to be liked? How can I avoid conflict? This wasn't a conscious strategy, it was a deeply ingrained habit of thought, a way of seeing the world. Her peace was a fragile thing. constantly outsourced to the moods and opinions of her friends, her partner, her boss. She lived in a state of low-grade, constant anxiety, always monitoring, always adjusting, always performing. The catalyst for her awakening was a betrayal. A close friend, someone in whom she had confided her deepest vulnerabilities, used that information to gain a professional advantage over her. The event itself was a simple fact. A person acted in a self-serving way. But Elena's initial judgment was catastrophic. I have been destroyed. My trust was foolish. People are fundamentally cruel. I am a victim. This narrative plunged her into a spiral of bitterness and withdrawal. For months, she lived inside this story, replaying the betrayal, feeding her resentment. The pain was real, but it was being amplified and sustained by her own mind. Her awakening was not a single moment of epiphany, but a slow, difficult turn. It began with a question she stumbled upon in her reading. What if the harm was not in what was done to her, but in how she chose to perceive it? She started to examine the judgment itself. The event was that her friend had acted without integrity. That was a reflection of her friend's character, not a statement about Elena's worth. The friend had revealed who she was. Was that information harmful, or was it simply information? Painful, yes. Disappointing, absolutely. But world-shattering, only if Elena chose to see it that way. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to construct a new judgment. A person I trusted acted according to their own flawed character. I am not harmed by their lack of virtue. I am only harmed if I respond with a lack of virtue of my own. My task is not to ruminate on their failure, but to focus on my response. What is the courageous, just, and temperate way forward? This shift did not erase the pain, but it changed its quality. It was no longer the toxic, looping pain of victimhood. It became the clean, sharp pain of a lesson learned. She realized she had given this person the power to define her reality. The real work was to reclaim that power, to stop asking the world for permission to be at peace. She began to set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of a calm recognition of her own well-being. She learned to speak her mind, not to provoke, but to be clear. Her relationships changed. Some superficial ones fell away, but the ones that remained became deeper, more honest. She had discovered that the fortress she needed to build was not against other people, but against her own unexamined judgments. This process of forging character requires training. It is not enough to simply understand these principles intellectually. The Stoics were adamant that philosophy must be a lived practice, a daily exercise. They developed a suite of mental tools designed to build resilience, perspective, and moral clarity. Think of it as a gymnasium for the mind. One of the most potent of these exercises is a practice we now call negative visualization, or in Latin, asterisk premeditatio malorum, times the premeditation of future evils. This sounds morbid, but its purpose is the opposite. The exercise is to spend a few moments each day calmly and vividly, contemplating the potential loss of things you value. Imagine your life without your job. Imagine your loved ones are no longer with you. Imagine the loss of your health or your home. The point is not to create anxiety, but to do two things. First, it drains these future events of their psychological terror. By facing them in your mind, you rehearse your response, reminding yourself that even in the face of the greatest loss, your core faculty of choice, your times proheresis asterisk, remains. You can still choose to act with courage and dignity. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it floods your present moment with gratitude. When you open your eyes from this contemplation and your loved ones are still there, your health is intact, your home is standing, you don't just take them for granted. You experience them with a renewed sense of their preciousness. You love them more deeply, not with a clinging, fearful attachment, but with a calm appreciation of the present gift. Another crucial tool is the practice of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics would deliberately expose themselves to mild, controlled hardship. Seneca would eat simple food or go without food for a day. Cato the Younger would walk barefoot in the heat and wear unconventional clothing to inure himself to public opinion. The modern equivalent might be taking a cold shower, sleeping on the floor for a night, or deliberately going without your phone for a day. Why do this? It's a vaccine against misfortune. By willingly choosing a small dose of discomfort, you teach your body and mind that you can handle it. You expand your comfort zone. You prove to yourself that your well-being is not dependent on luxury or constant ease. When real hardship inevitably arrives, an illness, a financial setback, it is not a foreign monster. You have met its smaller cousins in training, and you know you have the strength to endure. These practices build the raw material of a resilient character, but that character must be shaped and refined through constant reflection. This is the role of the philosophical journal. The most famous example we have is the Times, Meditations, Times of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. These were not written for publication. They were his private notes to himself, a daily practice of self-correction and reinforcement of Stoic principles. In the quiet of his tent during military campaigns, he would write to himself, reminding himself of the dichotomy of control, examining his judgments, preparing for the challenges of the day. When you wake up in the morning, he would write, "Tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This was not cynicism, it was preparation. He was reminding himself that the behavior of others is outside his control, but his response is entirely within it. He would not be surprised or angered by their vices. He would meet them with the virtues he had cultivated in himself. A journal is a mirror for the soul. It allows you to catch your own faulty judgments in the act, to trace your anger or anxiety back to its source in a mistaken belief. It is where you can rehearse a better response for next time. It is the architect's drafting table, where you lay out the plans for the character you intend to build, one day, one choice at a time. And this leads us to the most practical story of all, a credible transformation. Let's call him David. David was not a CEO or a chronic people-pleaser. He was an ordinary man with a quick temper. His default reaction to frustration, a difficult colleague, a child spilling milk, a driver cutting him off, was a flash of anger. It wasn't rage, but a constant, simmering irritation that soured his relationships and kept him in a state of agitation. He knew it was a problem, but he felt powerless to stop it, as if the anger was a reflex, an external force that hijacked him. He began his study of Stoicism not with grand philosophical treatises, but with one simple, actionable idea: the pause. He read Epictetus's advice: "Do not be carried away by the impression, but say, 'Impression, wait for me a little. Let me see what you are and what you represent. Let me test you." David decided to try. He made a deal with himself. The next time he felt that familiar hot surge of anger, he would not react immediately. He would force himself to take one deep breath before speaking or acting, just one. The first few attempts were failures. The habit was too strong. But he didn't judge himself harshly. He just resolved to try again. Then, one afternoon, his boss unfairly criticized his work in front of the team. The familiar heat rose in his chest. His instinct was to lash out, to defend his ego. But the new rule kicked in. He held his tongue. He took one deep, deliberate breath. In that brief 2-second pause, a space opened up in his mind. He had time for a single question: is his opinion within my control? The answer, clear as day, was no. Is my response within my control? Yes. He didn't suddenly become a sage. He simply said, calmly, "I understand your concern. I will review the project and address the issues." It felt like a monumental victory. He hadn't suppressed the anger. He had simply chosen not to be governed by it. He had inserted a moment of reason between the stimulus and his response. This one small practice, repeated day after day, began to compound. The pause became a habit. Within the pause, he started to dissect his judgments. The spilled milk was not a personal affront. It was a consequence of gravity and a child's motor skills. The driver who cut him off was not a villain trying to ruin his day. He was likely just distracted or in a hurry, his actions a reflection of his own inner state, not David's. Over months, and then years, David's entire disposition began to change. His family noticed he was calmer, more patient. His colleagues found him more approachable and level-headed. He wasn't a different person, but he had taken command of his own inner world. He had learned, through painstaking practice, to be the master of his own mind, not its servant. His transformation was not a dramatic, overnight conversion, but the slow, steady, deliberate construction of a new character, built brick by brick, pause by pause. He was not just acting like a Stoic, he was becoming one. It is here that we must add a layer of crucial nuance. The modern revival of Stoicism often frames it as a set of life hacks for productivity and personal resilience, a way to become an unflappable superhero of the self. While the tools are indeed effective for building resilience, this is a shallow interpretation of a deep and noble philosophy. The ultimate goal of classical Stoicism was not merely to feel good or to be immune to pain. The goal was times eudaimonia, times a state of human flourishing, and for the Stoics, this flourishing was achieved through the practice of times arete asterisk, or virtue. Virtue was the sole good. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, even life itself, was considered an indifferent, not because they didn't matter at all, but because they had no bearing on one's moral worth. You could be virtuous in sickness or in health, in poverty or in wealth. The virtues they prized were the four cardinal virtues of classical philosophy: wisdom, the ability to navigate complex situations with logic and reason; justice, the commitment to treating others with fairness and integrity; courage, the strength to face fear and do what is right; and temperance, the mastery of one's desires and appetites. This is the crucial difference. A person who uses Stoic techniques simply to crush their anxiety so they can be a more ruthless negotiator has missed the entire point. They are sharpening a sword without any thought as to whether it will be used for defense or for murder. The Stoic trains their mind not just to be strong, but to be times good asterisk. The inner fortress is not a bunker to hide in, but a command center from which to engage with the world virtuously. The goal is not to be an island, but to be a good citizen, a good parent, a good leader, a good human being, acting with excellence in the sphere of your influence, however large or small. This is where the practice culminates in what might be its most challenging and beautiful concept. Asterisk, amor fati asterisk, the love of one's fate. This is a step beyond mere acceptance. It is not just tolerating what happens, but actively embracing it. It is the conviction that everything that happens, the pleasant and the painful, the victory and the obstacle, is the necessary and perfect raw material for the practice of virtue. A difficult boss is not a curse. He is a training partner for your patience and justice. An illness is not a tragedy. It is an opportunity to practice courage and to find value in things beyond the physical. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." A fire is fed by the obstacles thrown in its path. For the virtuous mind, life's challenges are not roadblocks, they are fuel. And to gain perspective on these challenges, the Stoics practiced what is called the view from above. This is a meditative exercise where you imagine your consciousness expanding, rising up from your body, looking down on your house, your city, your country. You see all the other people with their own struggles and dramas. You keep rising, seeing the earth as a small blue marble, then the solar system, then the vast, silent expanse of the galaxy. From this cosmic perspective, your personal problems, the anxieties that felt so monumental just moments before, shrink to their true proportion. You see yourself as a tiny part of a vast, interconnected cosmos, a brief actor in an immense drama. This doesn't make your life meaningless, it makes it part of something magnificent. It frees you from the tyranny of the ego and connects you to the whole. So we return to where we began, that feeling of a deep, unshakable connection, that sense of alignment. The world tells you to find it in another soul, but the Stoics offer a different path. The alignment you seek is the alignment of your will with reality, of your actions with your highest values. The profound connection is the one you forge with your own ruling faculty, your reason, your time's prohairesis asterisk. When you have built this inner citadel, when your peace of mind is not contingent on praise, on success, or on another person's affection, something remarkable happens to your relationships. You cease to engage with others from a place of need. You don't need them to validate you, to complete you, to make you happy. You are already whole. Instead, you can engage with them from a place of strength, of virtue, of genuine giving. You can love them not for what they do for you, but for who they are. You can support them without entanglement in their dramas. You can be a stable, reliable presence in their lives precisely because your own stability does not depend on them. You become a lighthouse, not a clinging vine. This is the foundation for the deepest, most honest, and most resilient human connections. They are not born of a desperate search for a missing half, but of the joyful meeting of two complete wholes. The blueprint, then, is this: distinguish relentlessly between what you control and what you do not. Focus all your energy on the former. Understand that events themselves do not harm you. Only your judgments about them can. In the space between stimulus and response, exercise your freedom to choose a rational, virtuous interpretation. Train daily. Practice enduring small discomforts to build resilience. Contemplate loss to cultivate gratitude. Examine your thoughts without mercy and correct them with compassion. Build your character as a craftsman builds a temple, with intention, with patience, and with daily work. Love your fate, for it is the only one you have, and it provides all the material you need to practice excellence. The most powerful alignment is not when two souls meet, but when one soul comes home to itself. This is not a destination you arrive at, but a path you choose to walk every day. It is the lifelong work of becoming the captain of your own ship, able to navigate any storm with skill and serenity, knowing that while you do not command the sea, you are the absolute master of the helm. Having built this inner fortress, we must learn how to be a worthy ruler within it and a just ambassador to the world outside its walls. The next chapter in this journey is to explore the Stoic art of social duty, of navigating our complex relationships with family, colleagues, and fellow citizens, not from a place of fear or need, but from a place of strength, justice, and shared humanity.